Hey everyone, this is Julie. Welcome to the You-est You podcast. I am super excited for you today. This is going to be a really fun episode. So I am here with Dr. James Kelley. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, but before I do, I want to give you a little preview. We are going to be having a bunch of fun because we're going to be flipping the script a little bit. So Dr. James is going to be interviewing me first, which is a first, and then I'm going to be interviewing him, and you are going to be in for a treat. He is an amazing guy. I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. James. His path is still being built brick by brick, as he says, and the current brick is the inaugural book. He just came out with a book called The Crucible's Gift, 5 Lessons from Authentic Leaders Who Thrive in Adversity. The book is based on interviews from 140 executives from Fortune 2 companies to entrepreneurs and everything in between. The book unpacks the journey that a leader takes to become a more authentic leader, starting with their crucible moments at the springboard. I want you to also know that Dr. James Kelley is the former host of the Executive After Hours podcast. So it's going to be really fun because he's done a ton of interviewing, and you can still find that on iTunes. A little bit more about Dr. Kelley before we get started. So against the laws of nature and human belief, in 2010, Dr. Kelley completed his PhD in international marketing at the University of Western Australia in Perth, Australia, and ascended to higher education to work in Philadelphia. And prior to this, what he calls his miraculous event of finishing his PhD, James spent time living in Japan, New York City, San Jose, Portland, and Chicago. And at each stop, James added work, life, and failure to his bag of experiences. Today, this is super cool. James and his wife, Mary, and his 4 children live just outside of Dubai, where he teaches, writes, and gives talks. In addition, he's also professor of marketing at the United Arab Emirates University. So I want you to know that this podcast, this audio, what we're doing today comes from the United States and also from United Arab Emirates. So this is pretty cool. And here we are. Welcome, Dr. James. Woohoo!
Are you ready, Julie, to enter the curiosity cave of Dr. James Kelley?
Oh boy, we're in for it. Yeah, I'm totally ready. This is so different for me. I'm like, wait, I'm not asking you questions. Okay, let me take a breath.
It's going to be so hard for you not to take control, by the way, because right now I'm like ready to take control and you're going to have to sit there. So okay. I want to say welcome to Julie Reisler to the You-est You, the flipped edition, right? And Julie, what I really want to know, I don't have this full lengthy bio because I want to spend this time for your audience to get to know the You-est You, the You-est Julie.
That's awesome.
And so my first question, Julie, is where were you actually born and raised?
Oh, so I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was raised right outside in the Newton area.
So is this like an Irish Catholic family?
So no, although what's funny is so if you know Boston, you're either.
This also tells you how little I know about last names because it's probably like a Jewish last name, right?
Right, German, right.
Yeah.
So it was mainly Irish Catholic or Italian Catholic. That was like you either had like the orange, green, and white, or the red, green, and white. And no joke, like literally for the different holidays, we would like St. Patrick's Day. You would have green bagels, green milk. It was crazy. Like everything went green. And then, for in the summer, they did this Italian festival and I would dance in these horrible costumes. It was bad. And everyone was like, I can't figure it out. Are you Irish? Are you Italian? I'm like, I'm actually neither. Yeah, my family are all from, German descent, Austrian, European, a little bit of North African, actually. I just found out my gene test. Yeah. So yeah, I was raised, it's interesting. I was raised from a Jewish family, and I would say from a very open-minded family. My mom was a former opera singer, music teacher. So she would sing in the Catholic Church. She would sing at the Black Nativity. Her best friends were ministers and priests and Muslim imams. And my dad, I was very lucky. I was raised with such openness, and that's informed a lot of who I am.
So yeah, what does that do for you in terms of the lens you look through in this world?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, James.
You sound surprised, actually.
I know. I'm like, oh my God, this whole flipping thing. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have to. She's like, an answer. So fun. It's interesting because I think, and this is probably getting on a deeper level because I don't know how to do surface. I'm going to go right down to the deep.
Do it.
Go deep.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. One of the things that I appreciate most about my parents and appreciate about how I was raised and then who I am today is this sense of oneness and openness and curiosity about not just curiosity about other cultures and religions and people, but a sense of connection. Like I just naturally, so it's funny when people ask, I mean, obviously I was born into a religion. My father is remarried to someone Catholic. My mom, I'm just, I'm remarried to someone who is of the Christian faith, but we have come together from a standpoint of what I feel is that piece of connection and oneness. And so for me, when I feel really deeply connected to humanity, and whether you're in the same religion or not, for me, it's about, being connected as a sacred human being. And so a lot of why I'm so obsessed about being your You-est You is this idea that I believe we are each an individuated divine expression of our creator. And they have different names. Some call it Allah, some call it Jesus or universe or goddess or, all different names. And for me, I believe we all come from that same thing. And so that sense of oneness and humanity, I've traveled, before children, I traveled a lot all over the world. And I remember—
Children ruin everything.
No, not as much, but that's okay. I remember that's so true. I remember being in Turkey and I was in this small area called Pamukkale. And this is before I got really sick from eating something I shouldn't have. But I remember sitting in these like cave houses. They were amazing. And just there we were, sitting, having tea with this family. I didn't even know them. I just happened to meet them. Our tour guide was like, yeah, come meet my family. I'm sitting there. I was crying. I felt like this is my family too. And I felt that over and over and over again. I could be in China. I could be in Turkey. I could be in Greece. It could be, wherever it is. I have had that sense and feeling and deep connection to humanity as one. And so, it's funny when people ask religion, I always say it's kind of like my zip code, but I feel like I'm part of the greater whole. And so for me, I go beyond that.
So it sounds to me like when you describe this sense of your upbringing, just in the short form, right? It sounds like this sense of inclusion wasn't necessarily forced verbally, but actually behaviorally.
Yeah.
It was thrusted upon you. Did you have siblings that you shared this with?
Yeah, so I have a younger sister, my sister Emily, who is lives out in Orange County, California with her husband and 2 kids. And she, I think probably while we had different childhood experiences, I think she would probably feel similarly. Like when it was Christmas, we were caroling with the best. I mean, I knew all of them. I knew all the carols. Yeah. If not, I probably could out carol you. Like,
yeah. Like the bar is fairly low, but go for it.
Right. I learned, we were put into different situations. It was just, and it was joyful, and it was,
are you two close?
We are close. We are now. And I think that, it's been a long road. She's very open about going. She's doing incredibly well. She's a blogger, photographer. She's an amazing family. Husband is awesome. She is in recovery from alcoholism, and I'm in recovery from food addiction. I always joke, like, our family is all about recovery. It just depends on what the vice was. Mine was food. I think she would say hers was food secondary, but the alcohol piece first. And so I think there was a period of time where I'm 4 years older. I got married really early. I kind of did like the whole stable life thing, and she definitely went out west and didn't for a while. But we've become a lot closer. I mean, I think we just get closer and closer.
Probably by shared adversity, I would imagine. Yeah. Probably brought you closer. So let me ask you, because you alluded to it early on. Your parents got divorced.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So how old were you when your parents got divorced?
Yeah, so this is the interesting thing. They got divorced, I want to say when I was 23. I was older. Wow. So they separated when I was right outside of college, but she was still in high school. And so we have very different experiences. I was already almost married, if not married, when they separated. She was in high school. And so she lived through, that was really, really hard, I think, for her. And I couldn't understand that at that time, because I was already out of college, like dating someone seriously, ready to get married. It was like, oh, all right. I knew that. I knew they were like brother and sister. And it was very amicable. My parents are literally like brother and sister, which was my feeling of it when growing up. I'm like, this doesn't really seem like marriage, but they do seem like
Okay.
good. All right. I mean,
Yeah.
all
So
right.
when they did get divorced, there was, for you at least, there was no huge angst. Like you were sad, but
Yeah. Well, it's a good, God, you're good. You're like hitting all the things I don't usually talk about right away, but this is good. I like it. You are good. Well, so one of the things, this is interesting for me. I was very sad and I was not surprised. And I think it pointed to something that I had not realized, which is, I know we all have intuition. I am very intuitive and I'm very aware of people and their energy. People, you can call it empathic, empath.
Mhm.
When I was very little, I mean, really little, I remember I had a memory of my mom reaching for my dad's hand. It's like maybe I was 4 or 3, and he just pulled away in a way that, like, I remember thinking, I
Like
just
almost
remember,
like, yeah, like, ooh, like
yeah,
uncomfortable.
yeah,
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And my dad was a Vietnam veteran. He had PTSD that was undiagnosed. There
Mm.
was a lot going on with him. My
That was my
dad,
dad too.
oh gosh, I mean,
Yeah.
wonderful dad, like the most amazing father to me. So I was very lucky, but I saw that brother sister-ish relationship from
Mm.
his side and a little bit of the dynamics. And I just remember having I just knew intuitively something was not completely cohesive, even though they were together. And there's benefits of having parents together, of course.
So
But
let
there
me
was
ask you a
one,
question there. There's a
yeah,
question right there.
yeah,
What gets me curious then is you were raised in this environment of two caring parents,
yeah,
not loving parents towards each other. So, and I don't mean but like the true sense of intimacy, right? So
right, right.
so as you get married, did you have a false sense of what love was and how it was supposed to be the first time you got married?
Well, so interesting. This could be, I always joke that, like, when you've done 40 grand and 10 years of therapy and like every personal development program, you'll be your You-est You also.
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
or that's why
totally.
I wrote the books I did. I'm like, let me condense it for you. Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically there was a lot of love in my family and my house. And there was love, but it was not the love,
Mhm.
you would, right, an intimate, I did not feel that there. I mean, I think my mom wanted that. My dad maybe wasn't capable. I don't know. So, but I had a lot of love from my dad, especially, and my mom in a very, in a
I know what you mean,
appropriate way.
but the parents are the role model, right? So
So, right.
your vision of what that partnership looks like.
Yeah. So it's interesting when I married a great person who I think still to this date was a great choice then. And I have 2 amazing kids. Like, I wouldn't change it. But what I did was and I know this, I really looked for somebody, good person, and he went to college, and I knew he was just he's a great guy. And he was very stable and very rooted and grounded and came from a family, 5 kids, and his parents are still together, and, big family, big dinners, big everything. We had a big wedding, 500 people. I mean, it was like big, a lot of family. I mean, all the time. And they're wonderful. And I think at that point in who I was in my development, I really, really was looking for something like rooted, grounded, stable, especially as my parents, I could sense when they were getting separated, and then my sister was
Mm,
struggling. And so for me, it was not a bad choice. I could have gone the other way and gotten
mm,
into craziness and drugs and all that. And nothing, I mean, hey, that can happen too. For me, it was like, all right, I'm going to find the most stability I can and
mm,
a good person. And so I do think the relationship I set up, some intimacy, but the way that it occurred for me was brother, sister. Like, I felt like the younger sister, which is what I
mm,
observed. And he was the older brother. He was in charge. I was like his little sidekick.
mhm.
That's how it felt. I'm not saying that's how it
Yeah.
was or how he would say it, but, and I don't put that on him. I mean, that's what I saw. And it was
Yeah.
interesting when I finally realized, oh my God, and I know this, I was a psych major. I almost went into this like,
So what was it that triggered it for you? What was it that was like the aha moment of like, he's
yeah.
not my brother, he's my husband. Why do I think of him like my brother?
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't consciously have said that, because I felt
Sure. I mean, I hope not. That would
right.
be a
No,
bit
no, no, no,
eerie,
no.
like
I would never.
creepy.
Yeah, that would be creepy.
He's
I
the
never.
brother I never had.
Right.
That's creepy.
Well, I'll tell you what, James. When we were really close friends in college, and I remember saying to him, "You have to be like, I just see you as the uncle of my children. Like, you got to be involved. Like, I should have
Yeah.
maybe should have listened. No, I mean, I think I had some intuition, but I again was not in a space of that
Mm,
that connection to my inner voice. And there's so many good things and wonderful things about him and about his family and the whole situation that I think what I thought was, oh yeah, well he's kind, he's respectful, like he's a good guy. It makes sense. It made sense to me. I thought like, okay, I'm in love with him. At the time I really felt that. And I think the intuition and the voices that at times felt like, maybe I wouldn't, maybe not, maybe this is not the right fit. I pushed those down. And what I did was I started, I always had struggled with food and using food to cope, but then it got really, really loud I was with him for 15 years. So it was quite a long time. We were married almost 12 years. So, I just started kind of numbing out, because when I would feel anything, I didn't know how to handle that. So I would just
describe the feelings. Like, what do you mean by feel anything? Like feel euphoria, sadness, depression,
yeah.
anxiety?
Well, I think I felt at times, again, in a different space. I was in my early 20s, and I remember like I was working in a nonprofit, and I didn't want to be there anymore. And I felt like trapped there, and I didn't know how to handle those feelings, right? Like eventually I handled it really well, and I gave him like 6 months notice and found a new job, but I felt overwhelmed. I felt trapped. I think I probably felt a little bit that way in my marriage, a little bit like I always say I felt like he was the CEO, CFO, COO, and I was the secretary. And knowing myself now, I'm like, I don't know how that happened, because, and I probably should have said something and spoke up. I think the way that we did religion and lifestyle was very different. And it didn't feel comfortable necessarily being in the observant, religious world that he came more from. And so I would just, rather than dealing with those feelings of discomfort, I would sneak chocolate chip cookies in the bathroom and eat them. And I feel like I stuffed my feelings.
Was that like shame?
Shame. I felt like that light of who I am felt like it was diminishing. I felt less.
Did anyone else around you see that as well? Or was it just because you have this light about you, right? Like your energy is really, really bright.
Yeah, thank you.
But also sometimes people who have really bright energy have really dark inside. Mm-hmm. So were you kind of managing this public-private self the whole time and people weren't really aware of it? Or did people around you know that?
Yeah, great question. Well, it's funny. And I share this, I don't know if I shared in the book or where. So, and again, we're doing life. I didn't like wake up and say like, I am wearing a mask. I actually am miserable. I just, because I'm one of those people, for those who are listening, like I did, if you've done Strength Finders, my top strength is positivity, which is great, but it's not, because what happens is, it is a great one, but what happens is I was always looking for the positive. Well, I'm so lucky. I'm so grateful. I have this and this, and I've got this love. And so I was very good at being like, no, things are great. I mean, I really self-talked to myself.
That's my wife all the way.
Right? Okay. And nothing was wrong per se. Like there was no abuse. There's nothing like that. Mm-hmm. So what happened was, I am a smiling person. That happens a lot. But what would happen is I got so used to smiling all the time. I realized later it was like wearing a mask. Like that's my mask. Not today. Today's very different. Actually, if I'm feeling something that is not happy or joy, you'll know. I can't hide that. But the long short of it is, it's interesting. I went into a 12-step program because it really came through the food. I was, hiding it. I was abusing. I mean, it was really destructive. And even though I didn't wear it, I may have been 30 pounds more than I am now. It wasn't, I wasn't at an obese stage, but it doesn't matter. If you're abusing a substance, that it becomes obsessive and crazy. And my way of doing life was all around,
And did it impact the way you were with the kids? Because you had little kids at this point. So like
not yet. My kids weren't born yet. No, this was
okay.
This is like 15 years ago. I got into 12 steps and I slowly started to unpeel this onion and the layers. And that's when I realized I had this aha, like, holy crap, I'm wearing a mask. And I actually started getting into acting. I did a lot of on-camera acting, commercials, hosting, video, voiceover, modeling, all of that, because I decided, it was really profound. I said, if I'm going to wear a mask, or if I'm going to, be in that realm, I'm going to do that and get paid at this point. I'm not going to do that in my life.
So I'm a little bit confused, not from your story, but from the manifestation of who you are at this point.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that, you describe your parents as super loving.
Right.
But you describe your marriage is not a charade. I don't think that's the right word for it, but it wasn't the You-est You,
I was
right?
not being the me-est me, and I didn't even know
Yeah.
who that was yet. Right.
And I think what's interesting though is that, I mean, one, you're young, so you're still sorting things out, but you've complicated it by getting married
Right.
young as well.
Right.
But I guess where I get a little bit, where I'd love for you to fill in some dots for me, or shapes, if you like, you can choose whatever metaphor you like, is what was it about your childhood that both you and your sister ended up having addiction? Is it a family trait? Did your mom and dad have that?
Yeah.
Like, what was the connection that would drive that behavior?
Yeah. Great question.
Disorder.
Yeah, I think I can thread it through because I could see how it's like, when you live it, you're like, oh, it makes sense to me. But no, it's a great question.
Yeah.
So just like big Greek, Italian families, same with the Jewish culture, food is huge, 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 huge. So love, food equaled love. We grew up, I'll give you the quick overview. I grew up in probably one of the wealthiest communities in the world. Newton is in the school system, the area. I mean, we joke that, there were like, everything was a Victorian or a mansion. And I think what happened was my family, we did well, but considering next in Newton, we lived in a smaller home. And I think my dad had a lot around that and felt less than. And so he used food as comfort, as love, as a way.
So was your dad overweight? Was he obese?
He was not overweight or obese. My dad was into financial planning. It's like the shoemaker who struggled with finances, and should have been the history teacher and football coach.
My mom was a bank manager, and she was awful with finances.
Right. Okay. Right. It was like, wait, what's wrong with this picture? I mean, that's a whole other convo. My mom came from a very well-to-do family. So we always that's a whole other conversation, but we always got saved, so to speak. My grandmother, I mean, it was dichotomy with the way my dad grew up on a farm. My mom was from really pretty nice area in Long Island. So I had two different things going on. But so I think that right away, growing up in a place where it's constant comparison, you drive home. Now I think about our house, it was fine. It was a ranch house, it was fine. But next to these, 10 bedroom, gigantic Victorians. I think for him, and I think my mom could have cared less, but my dad really struggled with that and dealt with, showing us love through food. My mom also is open about her addiction with food, and she's also in recovery. So, in the middle of the night, like if you had a cake, it would be gone the next morning. I didn't eat at night, but oh yeah. So, and my dad also hid food. I mean, my whole family. I sometimes think, well, I mean, addiction is addiction. It doesn't matter what the substance. The funny thing is with food, it's insidious because you don't die, like a drug overdose, but it could happen over time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Okay. So that makes sense. So you're kind of raised, I don't know if predisposed is the right word, but you were definitely raised in an environment where there were addiction tendencies all around.
Oh gosh.
Attachment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you get a divorce, how old were your kids at that point? And what were you doing career-wise?
Yeah. So just to fill in the gap. So I did a lot of, I started with the 12-step programs and then worked through Artist's Way and then other personal development programs and therapy and coaching. And the next thing I knew, I felt like I was excavating my me-est me, but that took time. That didn't happen overnight. Sure. And I knew before I had children, I knew intuitively, I wanted to be in a really place of wholeness to the most that I could be. So we waited. I didn't have children, my kids are 10 and 12. And so I had this realization, wake up call. It's the only way to say it. I mean, literally woke up in the middle of the night with a panic attack. It just came to me, to my body. I just knew I was not okay in that marriage. And again, the tough part is there was nothing wrong. He's a good person. There was no abuse, nothing like that. It just, it didn't fit who I'd become. And my way of doing life, my values, the way I wanted to observe or not observe religious laws, all of that. And my kids at the time were 6 months and a year and a half.
Wow.
Or 2 years. They're a year and a half apart. So it was really, really a very intense time. I was working at that point. I worked for the most successful franchise with a company called Panera Bread. And they were awesome to me. I had 11 years there. I was director of recruiting. I did leadership training. I did guest relations, like 2 jobs. I would say I had a 2-for. I was like 2 for 1. I had these 2. When I started, they had 10 stores. When I left, they had 63. It was crazy. It was really cool. But I was working full time, and it was really stressful. Really
Did you have
stressful.
any support for you when going through that process? Because your parents are in Boston, your sister's out west living up
Yeah.
life, and you have two
Yeah.
little kids.
Yeah. My mom actually, you call it divine timing, call it coincidence. She decided to move about 6 months before this happened, right near me. And my mom, we're close. I love her. My mom and outwardly struggles with anxiety. So what I would say is that the support came more from her just being amazing, helping me with my children, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily for me personally, although she's
Sure.
loving.
But that's what you needed the most, honestly. Like,
Oh my gosh.
you needed that buffer so you could
Yeah.
reflect on yourself for a
Oh,
bit.
I called her my secret weapon. She saved my butt. She has been, she still is an incredible support. She's helped me to this day, a couple days a week, so that I could eventually start my own business and do this. And I did have support. I was still very involved with this 12-step group and having, and then part of a group that helps if you're a family of an alcoholic. So I had like people, sponsors, friends, people, very close friends, I'd say 4 or 5 very close friends that I could lean on. It was interesting. It was definitely one of the more, I think of the Crucible, like the name of your book. And it's like, for me, I felt like I was in a cauldron. Yet I knew, like the phoenix that rises out. It's why I usually wear a phoenix. It was, to end a marriage. And it was me who was the one that decided, I explained it, just, this is not working. A very big loving family. No one really gets divorced there. So like, this is a big deal. But it was my truth. And today I'm not able to live a life that let me say it in the positive, to live in authenticity, integrity, and true to my me-est me, like there's no other option today.
So when you think about this, and how old are you at this point?
So goodness, how old was I
27, 28?
No, so this was like early 30s, because my kids were already a couple years. Yeah. I'm older, I think, than you might think, but yeah. Because
I was going with like 31. You were 31 right now.
Oh my God, you're awesome. No, so yeah, you're nice. You're kind. I don't know if you thought that, but no, definitely way beyond that.
I'm actually just lying to your face. I just wanted to be polite.
Right. He's just lying to my face, and it worked. I was like, that's the thing. The truth is, I could care less about age. It doesn't matter. It's wisdom. So yeah, no, it was 30s, my 30s.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting, I think 30s is an interesting time. The wheels of my bus were slowly falling off in my early 30s, right before I got married. And I think at 30, people seem to find themselves somehow, right? Yeah. Like they start to figure themselves out a bit more. So as you were starting to wade through this water that you've never been in before,
right?
How are you coping day to day? How are you feeling? Is your confidence shot? Are you questioning what love is? Like at this point, I'm not saying you're desperate, because I think you feel relieved, but you also have to have a sense of curiosity of what's wrong with me versus what's wrong with the situation.
It's that's a good one. I had done so much. I'm talking probably thousands of hours of reflection, writing, journaling, talking, daily check-ins. Like we're talking already been 9 years of that, that what I felt was I had such faith in my knowing and my intuition. It's actually one of the times that it's one of the most grounding experiences internally, because I really started to get that I have all the answers within. So I teach this and I'm obsessed with it, because I had been hearing these little things, voices, knowings, and I didn't listen. And finally, I was listening and finally getting in alignment with what felt really my truth. And even though it was messy, which is ironic, because if people know me, like I love things that are beautiful. I don't really love messes. Like I usually try to outsource that. Like I clean whatever, but I don't love, but this was messy and amicable. It wasn't, but still it's messy to untangle everything and to end a marriage. It was a big deal. And, I don't know. I had this faith. I think that I can't explain it. I just knew. It's funny. I had a guy that coached me who has become a very close friend. And when I was trying to make the decision, what do I do? And he said, Julie, it's the most powerful question that I think changed my life. He said, Julie, if you knew your life would be amazing either way, whether you stayed married or not, what would you do? And it was one of the first moments I thought, oh my God, that's a choice. And I never even thought of that. I could have an amazing life and follow my truth and not stay married. Whoa. It was very powerful. I felt my whole body just get quiet. And I knew immediately, I didn't have to answer. I said, I don't want to stay married. It doesn't work for me. And he's like, okay, great. Go figure that out. And he's like, and then come back. And there was a program he was running. He's like, and then come coach with me in this program. And it was amazing. It was like 9 months later, and I had all my affairs were in order. I was in my new place, like literally the day before I moved in my new place. And I showed up to this personal development program that I was coaching. And I just said, I don't really understand how this just happened, but between that question and today, everything has been arranged and taken care of. And I felt freedom is probably one of the things I value most. And I felt so free. So that faith, I think, in my being guided, and that's probably where a deeper, divine connection, not religious, but spiritual for me was also, I leaned on that a lot.
So because I think your audience really loves to hear your thoughts on this, because I know I do. My assumption is that I want to know what your audience does. You talk about the ability to listen to your intuition. Like that's something I truly struggle with.
Yeah.
Because at times my intuition, I think, has let me down and I've made bad choices. Typically early in my 20s, typically in college. That might be a whole different cerebellum issue. I'm not sure.
Right.
But how do you teach yourself to listen to that intuition? Because I think that's something that everybody struggles with all the time.
Yeah.
Almost no matter how old. I feel like people say they grow into that.
Yeah.
But I'm 44 and I still, I have pushed my intuition away for probably 10 years towards my career.
Yeah.
And it's like bubbled up so hard and so far that it almost gives me anxiety that I'm not listening to her voice all the time.
Well, even the fact that you said you are hearing an inner voice, are you hearing that? You said you are hearing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I have a different pull now, right? So I have 4 kids. So
right.
It's not, you can't pivot in career and go be entrepreneur out of the blue.
Yeah.
And my wife doesn't work full time. So, she does the amazing job of being a mom. Right. I do the amazing job of trying to be a dad. So.
Right. This is probably my favorite topic. It's one that I see, this is the area I want to play in and swim in and delve into more in my life and help people here, because this for me has been the GPS. To me, it's the GPS. It's our inner GPS. And so a couple different thoughts about it. I think, like you were mentioning, you have that, you hear it, you hear that inner knowing. And so I'm thinking for people listening, like first, and for some, you hear it, you might feel it, you might see something, you might just get a gut feeling, like a good feeling, a weird feeling. You might, it comes in all different shapes, sizes, flavors, ways. I had a pretty strong intuition for a long time. And just like you said, I didn't listen, or I listened. There were times I listened and it ended up being a good choice. I think one of the, today I deliberately hone in on my intuition and I craft time and space to do that. And so I think there are 2 things you're asking. One is cultivating it. And then do you listen to it all the time? Like how you can't just leave where you are. Your intuition might be like, I need to move to Colorado in Boulder and like start a food company, which maybe is, I don't know if that's at all what you're thinking, but
but I like the analogy. Good, go.
Right. So I think there's the what do you do with it, which comes after. That's more the action, and I'll say it this way without getting too deep into this, because it's actually a very, very this could be a very deep, long conversation around, the idea that I believe we have feminine, we have masculine energies, divine feminine, masculine energies. Feminine is more about receiving and sitting still and taking in, and male is more about action and getting out in the world and manifesting. And as men and women, we have both. And our society tends to be very into the action oriented. We just are. Take action, go forward. What's missing, I think, and there's a real calling for this, is more of that feminine. Or you could call it, if masculine feminine doesn't work for you, you could think of it as just being still versus taking action. And so the stillness piece, what happened is in my recovery work, 12-step, we had to meditate, we had to be still. And then I did a master's degree program in mind body science. I had to meditate. I hated it at first, but that being still, that getting quiet, what happens is slowly over time, it develops your ability to hear and to connect more. with whatever you call that, your higher self, connection to God, creator. And so I would say the first thing is to start creating an atmosphere every day, a practice, call it meditation, being still, breathing, but giving yourself time to build that capacity. And that stillness is something I believe, unless you're naturally cool about being calm and still, I'm not. I'm a type A, like overachiever. So that is not my natural MO. But I'm training myself to be that way so that I can then hear, and listen to my intuition. Now taking action on it, which is actually more as we said, the masculine side, that's something different. And I think that's the other piece. Like, so you get the intuition. Okay, now what do you do with it? And I'm a big believer that, when in doubt, don't necessarily like go take action right away, but notice the patterns. If over time, for me, I realized I really feel like I'm supposed to be doing my own business, not just working for a company
you
that
just
I
kept
liked.
hearing it again and again, right? Like,
yeah,
you felt called to that almost.
I felt called to it, and we could get into I won't go too into this, but for me, I'm somebody who, the more I've gotten connected spiritually, feel like there's all of this wisdom and infinite intelligence that is not always physical. So sometimes that could seem like a pattern or a sign or now we're getting more into metaphysics, but yes. So I would ask signs, and that has been a profound piece for me around peace as an inner peace and piece of the puzzle. Honestly.
Someone I was listening to, I don't know what podcast it was or what famous person it was or something like that, but it really resonated with me. I was listening to how I built it,
Yes.
the NPR show.
Yeah, it's great.
And he had an entrepreneur on, and I can't remember who it was. I just discovered the podcast. I'm a bit late in the game, but the guy said that when he started seeing, it was the bird and snowboard guy, I think that was. Anyhow, we said when he started seeing patterns of something in threes, something that was like, it was the Lululemon. That's who it was, Lululemon. He said he started hearing the word yoga like 3 different times in 3 different places at 3 different like contexts.
Yeah. And
to him, that was a sign that there was something brewing in that area. So taking that into what we're talking about, that's kind of how I'm getting to with my intuition, is that when I keep hearing or feeling the same thing in different situations, I'm trying to pause, reflect, weigh up the actual rationale of doing that choice, and what are the impact if I do it, and what's the bigger impact if I don't do it, right? That question of, is your day gonna be amazing either way? Exactly. Which one would you choose? Right. So I want to be conscious of our time, because you've been awesome on your show that I'm interviewing you on. So I want to kind of speed up, because you get married. You didn't have any more kids, did you? Did you have one more?
I have a stepdaughter now from my marriage, but no more children through me. Nope.
Halas. Sorry. That's the Arabic word of finish is called halas.
Halas. Done.
Yes. So one of the things I'm really curious about, and this kind of will tie it back to your book then, right? You sound as if you've been on this journey for a really long time to find the You-est You. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is there what is the drive for you to do this? There's many of us who just kind of go on the path and deal with whatever BS is thrown in our direction. What was it about yourself inside that compelled you to go on that journey?
So it's terrific. I love this. It's really fun. I'm like, wow, I'm not usually thinking in this way about my own self. I felt, let me think where to start with this. So part of my moving through both addiction, excavating myself, realizing about my marriage, all of these things, I remember having conversations, call it with God, creator, whatever you call it,
why do you keep doing that? I'm just curious.
Why do I use different words? Because inclusion, because I know for some people, God is, I think having that time in 12 steps, we are very careful, higher power, God can
You don't want to
create.
label it one thing for you, or it could be perceived something else for someone else.
Yeah, I know that exactly, inclusion. I want people to feel comfortable and find their
I was
words.
just curious.
And for me, to be honest, every day is a little different. Some days God really speaks to me. Some days it's like divine universe. Some days it's creator. Some days it's infinite intelligence. So for me, I use different words, which is funny. So I'm probably doing a little bit for me and for those listening that may or may not identify with that word.
So wait, why do you do that? I'm just curious why you haven't, like, why hasn't one of those resonated with you? Because I feel like you either believe in God, or you believe in a divine spirituality, or you believe it, like,
it's all the
you
same
seem to be
me.
vacillating. Okay.
Well, no, it's all the same for me. I'm very in tune with words and the vibration and the energy of words. If you see my house, I have quotes, I have words all over my mirror. Like, so it depends on how I'm feeling that day. There's some days where the word God really like, zoom, that fits. And some days I like to think of it as a divine universe. It's really just how I am. I like different words, but to me, it's all the same thing. We're all from the same creator. We're all created from the same thing.
So I didn't mean to derail you. I was just curious.
No. I do that. And I think it's inclusion. It's also for myself. But I think that what I would say is that I remember having this like plea with God saying, look, I know that I came here to make a difference for people. If you help me to deal with this addiction, to move gracefully out of this marriage, to be free in myself, my highest self. I remember thinking like I had this contract, like I will help as many people for the rest of my life who are struggling. It was like this deal or contract I made. And
reminds me of a movie, really.
I know this really happened. And in my book, there is a contract. I will tell you that when I was very young, I did have a premonition, so to speak, moment. I remember telling my parents, like, I just know I'm here to help guide people and help people to be their best self. I didn't say it in those words. And I could feel intuitively in a larger perspective that these things I was going through was really not fun, but crucial for me to become and excavate myself, my best self. And so that fire to now, once I start to feel free and grounded and, just like literally like shackles off, my obsession was to help others. Like it still is the same. That fire has not changed, and it just shows up in different ways. I wrote my first book, Get a PhD in You, because I literally took what was 15 years of incredibly intense self-study. And I was like, you know what, I heard that voice for a year, James say, Julie, you've got to write a book. And I'm like, what the hell? I've never written a book. I'm really obviously wordy. I'm flowery. Like, I don't know. I like to speak. I don't know about writing. And I just heard, no, you need to write this. You need to write this. You need to write it to your younger self or someone like you'd be coaching. And that's part of my purpose here, is to help. I can't imagine. I know what it's like to feel trapped, overwhelmed, lost, lack of self-connection, self-love, self-confidence. I know what it's like to feel a lack in that, like massively. There were times I didn't want to live anymore. I'm so grateful. Thank God I never followed through on that, but that was there for me. And so I think today it's like my obsession, that I can't quench the thirst or the fire. I can't put out the fire on this. It's like I am lit up about helping as many people to identify their contract, their sacred, divine reason for being here. And just like, I feel like now I'm able to live in that. And, even looks very different today than it did 7-8 years ago. And
So let me just ask this last question, because I want to be conscious of our time here.
Yeah. And then we're going to flip. Ready?
Okay. Then we'll flip, and then I'll do my back handspring and really surprise you.
That would surprise me.
It would surprise me too. As you are in this cocoon and you're fighting yourself to get out to be the butterfly, right? As a metaphor.
Yeah.
How do your relationships change around you with your family and your sister and your friends? Did you lose some? Did you gain some? Like, how does that manifest itself over a 15-year period? Because it is a tall order and a long journey.
Yeah.
But you're still on. The journey's not done. It doesn't end just because you wrote a book and you're out serving. It still moves on, right? So, but it sounds like you went through an intense period of pain and self-reflection to get out to the other side, to be a better version of Julie. So how does that impact your relationships in the process?
Yeah, it's great. It's funny. I just met with a friend yesterday I hadn't seen in a long time, who I'd met years ago on a ski trip when I was 14. And then we stayed in touch and wove in and out of our lives. But to answer that, it's interesting. I had already started to form a very close-knit group of friends that had already started to be a little bit different, I think, than the community I was part of. And, frankly, a lot of the friends I had, some of the friends I had were mine a lot were through my former husband and his family. I pride myself in, one of the words I would say that I was holding on to was grace, and doing divorce life with gracefully. So a lot of the, I believe like attracts like. When there's a difference in interests, in the way you're living your life, what happens is things naturally fall away. So I was fine with some of the people I was friendly with, not close with. I didn't see as often, I didn't see as much, or some people that I haven't seen that, I don't know, could be listening to this podcast that, hey, we used to hang out because of my former husband, and hey, lots of love to you. Seriously. And there's some that have gotten back in touch through Facebook. Love Facebook for that reason. But so it actually felt like a pruning. You could look at pruning naturally in neuroplasticity. You could look at it in nature. And so it felt very natural. There were some people that fell away. The community I was part of, I felt that was natural too. I'm still somewhat involved because of my kids, but some of that shifted. But I didn't take myself up fully. I mean, I moved a little bit further away, but not incredibly far away. And I do feel like the friends that I've had through my different, recovery and personal reflection work, 12-step work, are still very close friends.
Sure.
I've just, now what's happened is I attract people that are really, really in line with who I am. And so I tend to.
What about your mom and dad?
Yeah, my parents are amazing. They're completely, what I'd say about them is unconditional love would sum them up. I mean, they've just been loving. They're loving to my former husband. I don't know if he always likes that, but they're very loving, kind, open, gracious. My sister.
They're inclusive.
They're super, inclusive and oneness is like, and love.
Yeah.
Those are the words.
Yeah.
My sister was hard. She felt like my former husband was like a brother to her. She would kind of grew up with him because she was younger. I think she's friendly still with him and his family, and that's fine. I have nothing around. Everyone can stay friends with everybody. I don't care. I don't look at it like that. So.
Well, Julie Reisler, thank you for coming on the You-est You and sharing your story with your audience.
Thank you, Dr. James Kelley. We're going to flip, but I want to say thank you because we definitely hit some subjects that I'm an open book, but I frankly, I don't always share all of that. And you asked some awesome questions. Thank you. That was really fun.
You're welcome.